Hi guys, my name is Ronnie Brady.
And my name is Snakearada Sacred.
We are members of the Tempus Lincoln Douglas Debate Resource Team, and this is our presentation on the November-December 2020 topic lecture.
Okay, let's get started. So first off with our resolution, the United States ought to provide a federal jobs guarantee. All right, so important wording. We've just, here we have ought and federal jobs guarantee. So the first one, we've provided a couple of different definitions. A moral obligation, natural expectation, or logical consequence. And we just recommend you use these based on whatever framework you're running and whatever definition fits best under that framework.
And the next word is the federal jobs guarantee. And our first definition is everyone in the country will be guaranteed a job by the US government should they desire one. And this is a more basic definition that is really quick and efficient to have in your case. And our next definition is a little bit more complex. It's a job guarantee is an economic policy proposal aimed at providing a sustainable solution to dual inflation and employment. Its aim is to create full employment and price stability by having the state promise to hire unemployed workers as an employer of the last resort. So this definition would be used in cross-examination to provide further details if your opponent asks for them. And yeah, those are our definitions.
Yep. Okay, so first off, let's look at the status quo. So what does the United States look like currently? So right now there are currently two plans that are active in terms of like the federal job guarantee. So the first one is the Chernerva plan, which establishes a $15 minimum wage. And the second is the Paul et al. Plan, which calls for an $11.80 minimum wage for all federally guaranteed jobs. And both of these plans essentially have the same goal. So they want to solve for the issue of involuntary unemployment by making the federal government the employer of last resort.
Mm-hmm. And next, what does the federal jobs guarantee change? So that's what's going to be happening in the AF world. First, standard wage for the federal jobs would be $15 or more. That's kind of the precedent established for this resolution. And a federal jobs guarantee would entail benefits such as health insurance, paid sick leave or vacation, and retirement plans. Control for state and local governments that will decide which kind of jobs to create. So this resolution obviously requires more government intervention, and a reduced uptake of welfare programs and unemployment insurance, as well as decreased criminal justice costs, will be changed as well.
Yep. Okay, so first let's look at common AF arguments. So the first one we have, you see, is access and economics. So we tell you that a federal jobs guarantee would provide government-funded employment to citizens. So for example, in the past, federal jobs programs have existed and like through FDR's New Deal, which provided employment to Americans in light of the Great Depression. These programs would also be beneficial in lifting people out of poverty by providing stable access to jobs, and this will be one of the most common arguments run on the F. Additionally, we have like the impact of COVID-19 on the economy and how it affects people's financial stability. And then as for like economics and such, we say that the effect of the program on private employers would essentially like cause them to adapt their job marketing and pricing strategies, which then would allow for workers to be able to bargain their wages and set like an industry standard for the workplace, as well as ensure increased competition, which would then allow for better workplace environments and conditions. Okay, so others that the others that you're primarily going to see. So first one is poverty. So it says poverty and job instability persist despite economic growth since 2009. So essentially showing you that like though we have seen growth since the past years, Americans still remain unable to find secure full-time jobs, and the FJG generates stable jobs and increases workers' bargaining power in the private sector, which solves for the issue or decreases poverty. Additionally, if the federal jobs guarantee reduces regional and social inequalities through job creation, so this might be a common argument that you see. The next one here is emergency preparedness. So for instance, currently with everything that's going on, like the COVID-19 pandemic, crises plunge families and the economy into chaos. And to solve for that, FJG builds resilience to respond to crisis, both economically and materially. And then the next one is economic stability. So essentially saying that FJG is necessary in order to provide workforce with decent wages and benefits, and it stabilizes the economy as it preserves workforces during recession. Um, and then the US economic recessions lead to massive losses both domestically and globally. So not just COVID-19, but like in the past. And examples would be like the rapid national shutdown has caused layoffs, and on Wall Street, driving stocks into their first bear market in 11 years, strains that have appeared in less visible markets that are critical to the ability of businesses to operate normally. And by the end of this month, the global economy is experiencing a shrink by or will experience a shrink by 1.2%.
Okay, next we'll move on to the neg arguments. So first is a very common counterplan, so a more progressive argument you're going to see on this topic. It's the Universal Basic Income Counterplan, or you'll just see it abbreviated as UBI. Basic is a governmental program for a periodic payment delivered to all citizens of a given population without a means test or work requirement. This counterplan argues that UBI is a better alternative to FJG because UBI circumvents issues of the FJG, such as crowd out of private sector and displacement of private workers, which are also going to be some neg arguments you'll see further in this presentation. And also, the second argument for universal basic income is the solvency. Most of these counterplans state that the UBI solves for social inequality better than the FJG. This is just because obviously it's more direct means of elevating citizens to an equal economic status rather than like the FJG still requires service from the citizens while it does not necessarily promote a better, it doesn't promise a better quality of life or more equitable economy. It just incentivizes them to work for these jobs. So next is just the common argument against the FJG. This is first thing you'll see on this topic is it causes a loss of necessary jobs that are not federally funded, and this leads to displacement of private sector workers. So the workers that are working in the private sector now would be incentivized to go work at these federally funded jobs. The statistic says that there are 39% of the workforce, and that equals some 54 million Americans. They now earn $15 an hour or less in the private sector, and they would all have an incentive to quit and join the federal program, which leaves these private jobs that they previously had unattended, and millions of workers would end up on the federal payroll instead of the private sector. A federal make work program would crowd out many of those private services, and the jobs funded by the government would not be more productive than the private jobs works today. So this argument is basically saying that it's not actually solving anything. Like, these people get higher wages, however this private sector, no one's working these jobs anymore. And the last point is just saying that the jobs funded by the government would not have any more exponentially better benefit than the jobs work today. And some more common arguments. First is implementation, just against the implementation of the FGJ. So the first is how the government would finance the guarantee. This source gave two options that they heavily critiqued. Option one was the guarantee would be financed out of taxpayers' pockets. Taxpayers would be asked to spend less but hire less people, and the private sector would fall as a result of this. And option two would be forced inflation, where the government prints money. So there's the government controls how much money is imprinted, so they purposely cause inflation, and then this imposes an indirect tax on citizens. And the impact of this is just an economic recession or an overhaul of the current economy, which causes a pretty drastic depression. And then the cost would be to hire the official and unofficial unemployed, and half the involuntary part-timers at $15 in an hour plus $3 an hour for benefits. That would cost around $450 billion, or that's 2.3% of the GDP, which is a pretty drastic cost. So these are just some technical critiques the neg is going to make on the AF. And just some more miscellaneous arguments. The eradication of unemployment would be wielded as a political brag that impresses upon voters that the economy is doing amazing when unemployment rates alone cannot prove that. So like politicians would simply boast like unemployment rates are like virtually gone because everyone's working these federally funded jobs, but that's just going to simply be an attempt to like divert behind what's actually happening to the economy. And so that like political corruption argument or political entanglement argument is going to be commonly run by the neg, and forces the second argument is that it forces poor people to work in the poor or like traditionally blue collar federal jobs rather than giving them a chance to elevate the profession and an economic status. So the argument with this is simply saying like poor people right now, like they can get like a private sector job, and although it won't have as high as a wage, like they're not forced to stay in that job. So that's the argument on that. And then the last one is there stigmatization around unemployment, that like if you're unemployed then it's gonna be like you're gonna be even more disrespected upon in the AF world, just because there's gonna be such a low number of people being unemployed. So yeah, that's all we have for this presentation, and thank you all
Yeah,
for.
feel free to reach out to any of our team if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you.